Hello, you're listening to Everyday Encouragement, Timeless Truth for Today, a weekly podcast designed to bring you snippets of encouragement to help you as you go about your day. I'm Jenny Guy, your host. In this episode, I'm going to talk about process. It's not a popular word because it implies time and effort. It's much easier to talk about results or rewards. Process is important, though, because without it, we can't get to the results and rewards that we want. I prefer to describe process as walking it out. Let's get started. Today, I'd like to read one of my favorite stories from the New Testament. It's found in Luke chapter 19, verses 11 through 17. It's a short story and won't take long. Here it is from the New International Version. Now, on his way to Jerusalem, Jesus traveled along the border between Samaria and Galilee. As he was going into a village, 10 men who had leprosy met him. They stood at a distance and called out in a loud voice, "Jesus, Master, have pity on us." When he saw them, he said, "Go, show yourselves to the priests." And as they went, they were cleansed. One of them, when he saw he was healed, came back praising God in a loud voice. He threw himself at Jesus' feet and thanked him, and he was a Samaritan. Jesus asked, "Were not all 10 cleansed? Where are the other 9? Has no one returned to give praise to God except this foreigner?" Then he said to him, "Rise and go. Your faith has made you well." I've heard this story preached a few times, and on each occasion several points have been emphasized. First, only 1 person out of 10 was grateful. Second, that one thankful person was a foreigner. Third, God's mercy doesn't play favorites. 10 men had leprosy, 10 men were healed. Fourth, obeying God is important because Jesus gave an instruction that as the men obeyed it, they received their healing. And fifth, faith is vital in receiving answers to our prayers. I agree with all of these points, but I've yet to hear someone talk about a 6th point. And it's because of this 6th point that this story has become one of my favorites. The 6th point is this. As the lepers went on their way to the temple, they were cleansed. As they traveled toward their destination, they received their healing. In other words, they walked out the answer to their prayer. The answer came as they went on their way to Jerusalem. Who knows at what point on their journey that the men's healing was evident? Perhaps it was when they had gone 1 mile down the road, or 2, or 10. Possibly it was when they turned away from Jesus and took their first steps toward Jerusalem. Maybe it was when they were almost to the temple that they saw they were healed. Embedded in this story are some historical facts that may not be readily apparent to us listening to it today. Recognizing these facts will help us appreciate the story more. Skin conditions for which we today routinely use creams and ointments and pills to treat and clear up were life-changing to people in Jesus' time. Back then, practically any skin condition, no matter how minor, was considered to be potentially leprosy. Any suspicious skin condition required that the sufferer be examined by a priest to determine if the condition was indeed leprosy or not. If the priest determined that the sufferer did indeed have leprosy, then the person was pronounced unclean and was forced to live apart from home and community for the rest of his or her life. In addition to being banished from the community, the sufferer had to stand away from crowds and travelers along roads. Also, the sufferer had to announce his or her presence by shouting, "Unclean! Unclean!" to warn others to stay away so that no one would accidentally come near them. If the person did not have leprosy, then after the skin condition cleared up, he or she could return home and rejoin their community. The 10 men in this story had been declared leprous, pronounced unclean, and banished from their homes and communities. This is why they stood at a distance from Jesus and shouted their request for him to have pity on them. By instructing the men to go show themselves to the priest, Jesus was actually telling them that their request had been granted, and the men understood that immediately, for they knew that they could only see the priest again if they were healed. Standing before the priest this time would mean that they would be officially declared clean. In his instructions, Jesus gave the men the end result, the answer to their prayer. But they had to obey him. They had to walk out his instructions before their healing manifested. I can imagine this story playing out. I see the surprise and happiness on the men's faces when Jesus tells them to go show themselves to the priest. They stumble over each other in their haste to leave him and get started on their way to Jerusalem. As they go, they wonder what will happen when they get to the priest. Do the priests have some sort of new special prayer for healing? Or maybe the priests have a ritual that will cleanse them and pronounce them restored to health. The questions keep filling the men's minds as they walk to Jerusalem. But despite not having any answers, they keep walking and walking onward to the priests at the temple. To shorten their journey, the men probably speed up their walking until they're practically running, their ragged robes flapping around their legs and their feet kicking up dust whirls in the road. Faster and faster they move, not thinking about the distance to Jerusalem or where they'll spend the night if they don't reach the city before nightfall. Just moving forward, encouraging each other to keep pressing on. Louder and louder their voices rise until the men who once had been silent in their misery are now shouting and laughing. Suddenly, one man stops. His toes had caught his eye as he walked, so now he stops to look at his feet. Really look at them. Toes that leprosy had nearly eaten away were now restored and healthy. The gaping holes where the toenails had rotted away were now filled in, and new, translucent toenails covered the skin. He puts his hands in front of his face and turns them over and over, looking for the leprous spots and scales and strips of skin that had hung from the stumps that used to be his fingers, for the disease had torn his hands, taking his fingers one by one until only stumps remained. Now he sees fingers instead of stumps. Stunned, he continues examining his hands. He counts his fingers. There are 10 of them, all healthy and sound. The man pulls his robe open and sees clear skin on his chest where it had been covered with sores. He runs to the side of the road and hides behind a tree where he frantically examines the rest of his body. Twisting and turning, trying to see as much of his body as he can, he looks and looks, but sees nothing. Nothing. Just clear, healthy skin. No more leprosy. He is cleansed. He is healed. Tears pouring from his eyes, the man runs back all the way he has just come to find Jesus and thank him. I think this story shows us another way in which God answers our prayers. We pray and pray, asking God for immediate solutions to our problems and situations. But sometimes He wants us to walk out the answer. As we take step after step in obedience to what He's told us to do, then somewhere along the way, our answer, our healing, our resolution comes. For example, you may desire a promotion at work. You've prayed and prayed over it, and you believe that God has let you know that a promotion is indeed on the way. As you pray, are you also doing all you can do to make yourself ready for that promotion? Are you upgrading your technological skills? Are you polishing your people skills? Are you being proactive instead of being reactive? Are you walking out your answer day by day, doing the next thing that should be done? Or you may want to go back to school to finish that degree you started years ago, but you need funding to do so. As you pray, are you looking for funding sources for adult or returning learners? Are you investigating work-study arrangements? Are you adjusting your budget and your family's expectations to accommodate your going back to school? Are you preparing yourself to live in your new reality of being a returning student? In other words, are you walking out your answer step by step? Perhaps God has given you an assignment for which you think you know what the end result should be. But you still have to walk out your assignment. You still have to go to God for instructions, as He usually shows us just one step at a time to take on our journeys of obedience. Each of these examples is our equivalent these days of going to Jerusalem and showing ourselves to the priests. This story is encouraging us to take the next step, to do the next thing that will move us forward on the path to our goals, our destinations, our Jerusalems. Here's a component of walking out our answers that may be easy to overlook. A step is small. It's the smallest unit of human motion that we can make. Walking something out means taking step after step, day after day, until we reach our destination. Some steps are longer than others. Some steps may come really fast, one right after the other, until we're almost jogging. But if we keep taking step after step and don't give up, we will reach our destination. Like the grateful man in the story, we may not realize that anything is happening until we stop and look. When we do that, we may be surprised to see that the answer to our prayer is actually manifesting itself as we go along our journey, as we do the next thing, as we walk it out step by step. The journey of that one grateful man inspires me to keep on taking steps to my goals. I hope his journey inspires you too. I hope you heard something today that has encouraged you and possibly given you something new to think about that will motivate or inspire you. If you would like a PDF copy of the show notes for this episode of Everyday Encouragement, Timeless Truths for Today, visit my website at jguypublisher.com. New episodes are published each week on Wednesday. I hope you'll join me for another installment of Everyday Encouragement, Timeless Truths for Today. Well, that's it for now. Until next time, be encouraged.